Welcome back to Disco, where we be gabbing about spirit, success, and all the invisible stuff shaping our lives. Today, we've got Susanna Rose Stokes and Denise Hontiveros, two of the women behind Metamorphosis, an amazing organization that is helping people access the ethical process of healing through altered states of consciousness. Yes, I mean mushrooms and other plant-based medicines. One came out of the military, while the other out of Silicon Valley, and both ended up in this deep psychedelic space. Now they're running microdosing programs, guiding big ceremony work, and helping people integrate to have lasting, impactful breakthroughs. We get into all of it. The misconceptions of psychedelics from previous generations, why integration is so important, and ways that you can become a more informed, supported participant alongside Metamorphosis. We're here to hopefully change some minds about the responsible use of plant medicine, or if your mind doesn't need changing, just introduce you to some awesome people and the awesome organization that wants to make these healing practices more accessible. So let's take a trip.
Disco, the podcast.
Disco, the podcast.
Susanna and Denise, we're happy to have you both on the podcast today. Denise, we know you from Telepathy Camp. It's so good to see you again.
Good
Susanna, you have to come to the next one.
Obviously.
You'll be there.
I could feel you guys in the telepathic field.
Right. You were there telepathically. Well, I want to talk about Metamorphosis. So, Susanna, you're the founder of Metamorphosis, and Denise, you are fractional CMO and an ambassador of Metamorphosis. And Metamorphosis, to just set the stage here for everybody listening, is doing a lot in the psychedelic space, helping people, leaders, in the ethical stewardship of altered states of consciousness. And we're going to get into all of that and dive in deep. But we wanted to kind of ground ourselves in your guys' stories a little bit first, because Susanna, you come from the Marine Corps, and Denise, you come from Silicon Valley, and now here we are. So interested in those transformations, and I guess Susanna, we'll start with you. If you could share a little bit with us, Marine Corps. I know that you were at Facebook for a little bit, and then psychedelic ceremonies. I mean,
it's
tell
quite
us about this
a
evolution.
metamorphosis.
I like that little elbow nudge too. Yes, there is a reason why Metamorphosis is called Metamorphosis, and I am just one example of the metamorphoses that we experience, and Denise has had her own. But a lot of times people ask me, they're like how?
Right.
How did you get from here to here? And what I've come to realize is there is an amazing amount of overlap in the warrior world and the spiritual world, spiritual leadership world, and the world in which we explore the depths and the edges of our consciousness. Because in the military, you tend to have a spirit of adventure, right? A desire to take some kind of risky behavior to get beyond yourself and to move into a new realm of consciousness, which the act of being in the military and being in this kind of unknown world coming from your little family unit puts you in a whole new environment.
I'd say, yes.
Yeah. And recently I came to the understanding that there's actually a significant, this seems like duh, of course. There's an incredible amount of programming done in the military to quiet your default mode network of the brain, become more in an altered state of consciousness, to be reprogrammed, to be more suggestible, to be more in the subconscious mind, so that then you can be, quote, programmed into these new, jobs that we do, which often involve physical harm, to other people. And on the other side of that, what I've realized is that psychedelics do it. They do very similar things. And even being in the spiritual realm, we are connecting to that authority figure very similarly as the military. But the difference is that now I'm directing it straight to source. And the first one was more of an externalized, idolized source of the government or your leadership in the military. And now I feel like I'm just kind of climbing the ladder of devotion to get to the truth, right? To get to true source. And I do believe that psychedelics do that. So there's a lot more overlap than you might think. And also there are just day-to-day um actions that we take that are in devotion that encourage discipline. And I would say that is a critical piece in both, which we can talk about more and dive into more. But a lot of the things I learned in the military are now serving me very well in the spiritual world of psychedelics.
Yeah, totally. I had never thought about the parallels before, but as soon as you said it,
Yeah.
my first reaction was, huh? What? But then you kept talking and I was thinking deeply. It's like, yeah, the military is a total institution where you're supposed to lose yourself in the service of a collective, and your individual identity is minimized to the point where, like, there's a lot of trauma in a lot of cases when you leave the military. You're like, well, who am I actually without that group identity? And like, yeah, connection to source is essentially connection to oneness and the realization that everyone is one thing, and it's also about minimizing ego. And I'm glad you brought in the default mode network already. I was going to get into that too. So I mean, I'm totally picking up the thread that you're putting down. So you might think that, but then starting a company, how did you so what was the moment where you're like, I think I need to take this bigger. I obviously clearly feel this passionately myself. I need to bring more people into this and essentially try to change, the world, whatever you're trying to do.
And I'm curious if this is, maybe you could weave into your answer. When you went into the military, were you of the mind, I guess, where were you at that point, spiritually speaking? Or was the military so transformative in that way that really was the catalyst for that?
Yeah, wonderful questions. And that restating of what I shared, beautiful. You are picking up what I'm putting down. I was like, we should write that down.
Yeah. I used to study. I'm a sociologist before this, so that was like, yep, Durkheim. She's talking about Durkheim right there. Yeah,
that is that's a bam moment. So yes, amazing. And I would say that the journey to the military came from a lot of the collective conditioning around me, which was growing up in a evangelical Southern Christian family system in the United States. And that led me to understand that I needed to be in service to something higher, something bigger. So there was a feeling of God, and there also was an expectation of my achievement to be a leader of some sort. So that conditioning started off with saying, well, why don't you go into the military? My father was in the Marine Corps, and he was highly persuasive. He's a litigator, so it's his job to persuade people. Oh, yeah. And so you don't really get away from that in some ways when you're in that household. But what it did was it guided me, and the expectation was, well, and I'll give you a little fun fact about me. Growing up, the expectation was that I would be the president of the United States. And I say that with complete seriousness. That was the expectation. That was the grooming. It was, you were going to go into the military, then you will you'll go to the Naval Academy. That's a great school to come from for
There's
politics.
Still time. And we're just taking a different route. We're just taking a different route. And please, Susanna, 2026, let's go.
2028, yeah.
Or 2028. I'm voting for
Senate
sooner. Please, sooner.
Yeah. I mean, talk about being saddled with an expectation. My God.
No kidding.
It was the absolute, it was how can you be the most, the biggest leader in the collective possible. And so the construct was Susanna will be the president of the United States. And in order to do that, she has to take these particular steps to get there. And some of those steps were go into the military, then, go to the House of Representatives, basically would be the first step. And then after that, I'd join the Senate and then eventually run for president. So
No pressure.
there was no pressure, absolutely no pressure. So the deconstructing of all of that to then realize that I had been, which parts of that were true and which parts of that were false or a distortion, or let's say like a layering of someone else's expectation of me. And this is where we get to the answer around scale. The knowing that I would be working on a massive scale had always been with me from a very young age. And I knew that I would be in leadership of something that was very large. So I was preparing myself for that. But the pieces that were the layers, that were the distortions or the expectations that someone else had, were the labels of what that leadership was, right? So like president of the US, like politics was a layer that didn't feel fully authentic to me. And as I got deeper into even studying politics, I was like, I don't actually care about this at all.
Yeah.
I don't care. So that led me into realizing that very quickly when I began to serve medicine ceremonies, I knew from the beginning that there would need to be some kind of scaling of this, because that is what I have agreed and has been part of my purpose, is to be in service to a very large collective group of people. And that part felt very, very authentic. So it quite quickly grew because of that knowing and because of my grounding in that knowing.
Wow. I
Yeah.
mean, there's a lot. I have more questions. I want to talk to you, Denise, for a little bit, because you've also come from this world and on the Silicon Valley side of things, where you're working with startups and you're still, at some capacity as a CMO, working in that space. But I'm curious, and I don't even know this story. I know that we talked a little bit at Telepathy Camp, but I don't even know how you came into Metamorphosis and your guys' partnership
And how you met.
How you met.
Yeah,
I have no idea that story, but weave in for us as well the evolution for you from a spiritual perspective, how you go from being in Silicon Valley and working amongst all these, busy-bodied minds to quieting the mind and coming into this space of spirituality. What did that look like for you?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I've been in Silicon Valley for the better part of like the last 3 decades
Yeah.
of my career since graduating college. However, I've been, I would say, up until recently in the last decade, a closeted spiritual seeker my whole life.
Yeah.
So when I was like 5, I had, sort of a moment of conscious awakening where I actually remember hearing myself ask the question in my head, why did I choose these parents? So like at a young age, I kind of knew I was an old soul in a way. I had a feeling like, and some thoughts around, I'm thinking these thoughts that feel really grown up to be thinking at this age. And that was kind of the story of my life. So I was always waiting for like my body to catch up to my old soulness. And I would always hang out with like the elders and the old people and the grandparents in the room. And I felt more at home with them than my peers. So that's all to say, when I came to Silicon Valley, I was in seeking mode. I was a closeted yogi. I used to sit at Spirit Rock with Jack Kornfield, in like 1999, when it wasn't cool to be spiritual in Silicon Valley. Like you really had to be in the closet. There was not a lot of crossover. Now it's really cool to say you went to an ayahuasca ceremony with your founder, your co-founder. But back then it was not a thing to say. So that's all to say, I was doing kind of living 2 lives. I was living like kind of a corporate startup marketing product, hard charging life by day. And then on the nights and weekends, I'd go to Spirit Rock, I'd go to Esalen, I'd do all these weird things that none of my friends at the time did. they all do now, but like Denise has been a yogi for like 30 years.
Right.
So long story short, I had multiple rebirths of my journey. I was in startups for a while. And then when I was an expat in London, I had actually during 9/11, like an early spiritual reawakening. So, where I kind of, realized I was in a job that wasn't aligned for me. And so I consciously left the startup world and actually took a tech sabbatical. I was like, I don't think I should be in corporate startups right now. I need to literally go inward and find myself, rediscover myself. So I spent a year like at Esalen doing meditation. I ended up just following my intuition, which guided me to massage school. I became a birth doula. And then at the end of that year, I realized I wanted to be of service in some way that was different than going back into startups. And so I opened a women's wellness practice, and I ended up serving over 3 years as a birth doula, over 100 births and babies. So that became like a part of my spiritual journey, and it helped me hone my telepathic skills.
Yeah.
I realized I was telepathic with my clients and their babies. Like these babies I'd be massaging the mom, and the babies would send me, I guess, the equivalent of like downloads and messages to pass on to their parents. And that was kind of my reawakening journey, is just following those signals and immersing myself in all of these different practices to hone my own channel, I guess.
Tell me, this is how that you guys met. Were you her doula? Was this
No,
okay?
I was a doula in like 2002, 2005 to 2005. So this was like a long time ago.
Gotcha.
And then I had my own twins, which now I'm a mom of teenager twins who they just turned 18. So after my doula work,
Is that
thank
what
you. I became a mom, and I kind of put my career on hold for a few years while I was in the twin mom phase. And then when I decided to go back to work, I wanted to merge my gifts and my reawakening gifts, if you will, with my marketing skills. So I started to weave more of that work together. But the way Susanna and I met, so several years ago, I did my first mushroom journey, and as a result of that,
of your whole life.
Of my whole life,
just a couple years ago.
My first ever psilocybin major, macro journey, we call it. And so that journey propelled me into the work further. I started to do group journeys. I became part of a community where Susanna and I met. We actually met at a medicine ceremony, a very large group medicine ceremony of like 22 people. It was the first time we met. And I was like, oh, and in ceremony, if you've done ceremony, any of you who are listening, you feel everything is energy and everyone is connected, especially in group ceremony. It's a really sacred container. And so you can feel everyone's energy. You kind of know like, wow, this person feels like I know them, or like they feel familiar, or they feel like, I call it anamkara, which is a Celtic term which means old soul friend or old soul family. So I kind of knew from that ceremony that Susanna was an anamkara and that we would be medicine sisters together. And from that point forward, I followed that thread, and there was a metamorphosis offering shortly after that group ceremony when we met that I was invited to. And I said yes. It was a clear yes, and I went, and it was my introduction into the Metamorphosis family.
Wow. What I love, I think, so much about hearing your guys' stories, and honestly, I think it really is everybody that comes into this work. I guess I'll say it's so much more than that, but it is such this authentic flow of getting to where you are, and I'm having lots of words, but it's just like it's so deeply within you. Like with Susanna, I feel like you come from this structure of having a military litigator father in the South going into the military, I mean, that could have been anybody else, and it would be a completely different story, right? And like, same with you, Denise, the way that it had been a part of you forever, but then you come into Silicon Valley and you had made a decision for yourself that I'm not in the right place. And, you know, it's just such an authentic, and what's the word? Just a place of your own authority to make those decisions for yourself because it's so deeply bedded within you. And you hear that time and time again when you hear these stories that it doesn't come from without, it comes from within, this place where it's just so deeply within each person, despite where they come from. And I just think it's incredible. So talking about metamorphosis, and Denise, you talked about ceremony, and I'm really excited to get into all of that, but want to talk about Metamorphosis as a company, and what it is that you guys are doing. So Susanna, if you can explain, you know, what is Metamorphosis? What are you guys doing over there? Like ethos, you know, how did it come to be?
Beautiful question. And I want to go even a little bit back because the word to me, I love that you said self-authority, but to me it's remembering,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah,
Denise and I think Denise more than almost any other person mirrors me in our sense of knowing from a very young age. And when she told me her story about, she's like, yeah, I just decided one day that
yeah,
I was going through this like spiritual process, and then I just like left everything, went on a sabbatical. I was like, that's some shit I would pull. And I love that. That's radical, right? Like that's the
yes,
radical remembering. But most people, it does take, and even for me, it took little bits of it. So metamorphosis is here to facilitate radical remembering. And the way that we do that is by empowering individuals and practitioners to be able to microdose, journey, and then go through their full awakening journey in ceremony, yes, and also in community. And that's because we believe in the power of plant medicines, earth-based medicines, psychedelics to quiet those parts of the mind that say, "Oh no, don't take a sabbatical. Oh no, don't leave the military. That's the known. That's where you're going to stay safe. That's what your family wants you to do. That's where society will accept you." And then you do a little ceremony or you start to microdose and you realize, "Oh, wait a minute. That piece wasn't authentic to me." And you start to regain a little bit of that self-authority. And then you realize another thing and you get connected to somebody else who looks like you, and then you have a Denise and Susanna moment where you mirror each other and you're like, "Wait. I see you, you see me, we're on the same path. Okay.
yeah,
Now I have a little bit more confidence to go forward because those mirror neurons are activated, right?" And then you keep going a little further. And what happens is slowly but surely, you as the caterpillar eventually get into the chrysalis and you're like, okay, I'm just going to do it. And at Metamorphosis, we provide an ecosystem of organizations and containers, safe spaces for you to be held by various different types of humans in your metamorphosis process. So yeah, I mean that's the general vision. Our vision really is to encourage people to be comfortable with change because we want there to be this world of sanctuaries, of 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 communal spaces where people can gather and safely change together and evolve because we know that we're at this threshold of a great awakening and this is the moment.
yeah. Let's hope. Let's hope.
If somebody has never done psychedelics, we have. I've never done them like in ceremony the way you've described. I think our path has been
We
you,
will admit that
yeah, you start
we
taking them with your buddies and it's fun, and then you get a little bit older and you start getting a little bit spiritual and you're like, holy shit, this is a pretty powerful spiritual technology. Why? Like if somebody's never done it, like I know this is a very like ineffable question to answer, right? Because it's like the psychedelic state is, it's like taking a thimble and wading into the ocean, and you can bring back like, you've experienced so much, but you can only bring back like a thimble of water, and then you have to try to use words to explain, which are just inherently impoverishing of like that experience. So I understand the stakes of the question that I've just put to you, but for somebody that's never done this, like what is the there, and like why is ego death such a profoundly healing thing? And that's in a macro context. I know microdosing doesn't involve ego death, and we'll get into that, but yeah.
I mean, just this question is fantastic. Denise, you should share what you think on this. I think this is your realm, Dragon Queen.
What's coming up for me, and I'll draw some parallels in the doula world, right? Like thousands of years ago, women could and did give birth on their own, like alone. But they don't need to, right? Like now you can actually have someone supporting you in that process, in that journey. So like on the macro level, I'll just say like you could go through a macro level ego death alone and just go into the forest by yourself and take 5 grams of mushrooms and go hug a tree. And you could also be held in ceremony by people who can hold space for you, who've been through it before, who can witness your ego death and hold you in a safe container and let you know, like, there's a human with you, beside you, and on the other end. So when you go through that, whatever, if it could be beautiful, godlight, or it could also be kind of dark. There's no guarantee that it's going to be rainbows and unicorns. So I will just say that to like the first, the newbie people. It's not everything you hear about, in the movies, right? It's like you choose your own adventure because you are a sovereign soul and you get to guide your own journey in some ways. But it's a beautiful experience of remembering, having all of the veils of sleep and forgetting that we go through as humans to like just come into being and be okay to navigate the earthly plane without dying, right? Like that's what our ego is for. Your ego is here so that you don't die. And when you are adult enough and you feel safe enough that you can let go of that for a moment, it's a beautiful thing on the other end to realize like who you are as a soul and why you came into being, to just remember that. And I think it's a process of consistently going back to like, why am I here? Who am I? What am I? So those are the types of questions that I ask when I go into those big journeys.
Yeah, and I'm curious too, because you just went through a very, I think, unique experience with your mother. And is it okay that I talk about this?
Yes, you can talk about this.
Where you facilitated alongside Susanna.
Susanna and I held space.
Yes,
Exactly.
for your mother to go on her first journey.
Mhm.
And, I think that generation or generations before us, especially categorize psychedelics in this space. Even my mom, she has been commenting about our podcast and she's been enjoying listening, but she's like, oh, wow, you guys really like put it all out there talking about the I sounded so Minnesotan when I just did that. Talking about like, the drugs you guys do and blah, blah, blah. And, and that's just the mindset because they grew up during a different time. And
the war on drugs gets in there deep.
Yeah. So I'm curious, the reframe that happens when you're having conversations. I imagine you've had plenty of conversations with those types of people, and I don't want to put them in a corner necessarily. But then Denise too, here you had this experience of holding space for your mother as she went on her first journey.
And it's been, I would say it's been probably like 5 years of evolution towards what just happened a few weeks ago, is when Susanna and I held space for her. But it's been a multi-generational healing process that actually, it began with me. Was where the seed was planted. And then I had my several years journey with the plant medicines. And then was microdosing when I visited my mom and my grandfather, my mother's father, in the Philippines for his 100th birthday.
Wow.
And I basically introduced him to microdosing at 100 years old.
Wow.
And he was brave enough and open-minded enough and was witnessing my vitality and my story. Like, it was through me being his eldest grandchild, bringing this to him as an offering, as a gift for him to basically continue to evolve his consciousness and his life force in a way in his, 100th year of life. I mean, he lived a century by that point, and he said yes, started microdosing. He was only microdosing for about 10 days. And I was still visiting with him. And he got up at dinner one evening, and he started dancing, like dancing like a 7-year-old would be dancing. And it brought me so much joy, and my mom and her sister so much joy. And I was like, is that how Lolo is usually at dinner? She's, no, this is not. Like, that's the mushrooms. And so it was this thing that happened in my grandfather that then created this ripple of healing and microdosing across my whole family. So my mother started microdosing, my cousins, my aunties and uncles.
You're like, I want what he's having.
They're like, I want that.
Yeah.
And like, if that's what you get from, and it was really like, because it's been shown, right, that psilocybin helps with cognitive decline. It does quiet the default mode network. For the first time in my whole life, I saw my grandfather cry, like genuine tears of joy and remembering when I was leaving, when I was saying goodbye. And that generation doesn't cry, they're very stoic. So all that to say, like, it's been a few years in the making of my mother being open enough now to say yes to her first macro ceremony, which was really beautiful, because it really was multi-generational healing of like body, mind, and spirit.
Yeah, I've wanted to do this for my parents. So, Mom, Dad, if you're listening, it's coming. But
We're here to support.
Right?
Yes.
We kind of did this in the opposite order. We were going to go micro to macro, but that's fine. We can go micro to micro.
We were just talking about microdosing. Let's keep. Okay. We do this.
Yeah, that's two hosts. It's like different agendas.
That's what makes us unique.
Having sat in these macro ceremonies, both of you, because like we've both been very intrigued, as I've said, neither of us have done it. Can you take us inside of them to the extent that you can? Like, what do people go through? What is your role? Like, what do you do? How do you help? How do you support? What do you see in the way of transformation after integration happens? I'm really curious about how they work functionally and sort of the emotional experience of them.
Yeah. And yes, the macro ceremony with Denise's mother was just, I mean, the lineage healing, you can see it rippling through, all the way down through the next generations. And that's one thing I love dearly about serving families and family systems. But that is a big piece of it. But I'll kind of go through what we call the metamorphosis method, which is the construct that we use to describe the whole ceremonial experience, which begins with preparation. And this whole method came out of so many of us having experiences with facilitators who really didn't hold the full process. And that led to fracturing, that led to, like you were talking about in the integration, how does this integrate in? Well, some people at the beginning of this, and a lot of it had to do with the propaganda around mushrooms, so people weren't putting their fullness into the experience, right? They kind of left you hanging at the end. And you're like, bye.
Right.
Hope you figure it out. And you got that thimble of knowledge from the universal vastness, but you don't have anywhere to put it. So we start with preparation. And we believe in this on all three main layers of our being, which is our body, our mind, which we believe is centered in the heart space, so the heart mind, and then spirit. So we're preparing people on all of those layers, and we are encouraging them through a one-on-one ceremony, or a one-on-one session. So you'll do a deep dive session to get them to understand their intention, and then you will just kind of guide them, nurture them in that process, right? Of encouraging them into the deeper layers of why are they even exploring this idea of a macro session. And then when they get to experience, which is the day of, a ceremony can look very different depending upon who the facilitator is, and of course the medicine, right? So we're speaking right now, let's say, about psilocybin because that is the main community medicine that we cultivate at Metamorphosis, but really depends on the medicine, and it also is highly dependent on the facilitator. In my personal ceremonies, there tends to be quite a bit of silence at the beginning and a lot of inward reflection. So we usually open the container with some kind of prayer, some kind of opening to welcome in the guides, the energies that are present, any intentions that you have. I tend to anoint people or give them some sort of blessing so that they understand the sacredness of what they're stepping into. And then they consume the medicine. And if it's a one-on-one container, then I'm there to be with them. And even in group containers, we usually spend a couple of hours in quietness, and maybe there'll be some music or light music, but there's often a period of what I call it the softening. Because the medicine
It's the
is
right thing.
going inside, right? It's the softening period where it's kind of squishing your body a little bit, right? It's softening your ego up. It's encouraging your default mode network to let go. It's you befriending the medicine, and that can last a few hours. And then there's almost always a moment of clearing or cleansing, some sort of cleansing experience in which we've got to release something in order to make space for whatever your intention is to really take hold and to begin to integrate. And that moment is usually characterized by a big emotion of something, right? So something's building up. There's a lot of tension. There is usually some sort of desire to purge it. It could be with our medicine, we don't tend to get a lot of vomiting, but we do get coughing, or maybe there's the body shaking or trembling. Maybe there is a desire to even get up and actually physically shake your body or move your body around. We want to encourage people to have a full primal experience, whatever that looks like. But I have noticed that over the years, and of course, depending upon the clientele that I'm working with and what their intention is, those releases have gotten softer, smoother, and a little bit more energetic. So there isn't as much, and I say energetic meaning like in the energy realm, not as primal or physical as they once were, kind of when I was starting out. And then you have the second part of the ceremony, and sometimes we'll offer a second dose. I know, in a lot of ayahuasca ceremonies, they'll offer a second cup of the medicine or a third. And that really allows you, what I describe to clients is it's like the first part was the roller coaster, like, and you get all that like tension up in your stomach and you're like, oh no, what's going to happen? And then you get to the very top, and then there is that momentum that you have to be able to ride that smoothly down. And that second part is really about beginning the cognitive integration. And then I wonder if Denise, you know so much about the critical period, and I'd love for you to talk about as the closing of the experience, ends, and then we step into integration, then there's that critical period, which Denise can share about, and then how we actually ground it into reality, right? Into your daily life.
Yeah, they've done studies that show that there's a critical window, which they call the critical period, after which you've consumed plant medicine, where the default mode network's kind of down, and your brain and your behavior and your habits are very malleable to influence, right? To reshaping what you want your daily life and your consciousness map to look like.
Sure.
And so that critical period is directly correlated with how long the medicine journey lasts,
Sure.
which is why in ceremonies like Iboga, which lasts, sometimes for days, there's a lot of reshaping that can happen, like reset of like addictions and behaviors and all of that. So the longer your medicine journey, the longer your critical period is, and the more it's just really important and essential to within the first few hours, and certainly the first 24, 48, 72 hours after you've completed your medicine journey, to really be intentional about what behaviors, new behaviors you're introducing into your daily routine, and what things you're releasing. And so positive affirmations, new meditations, daily habits, if you will. If I want to drink more water, okay, like you actually ground that in the first 72 hours where you're performing the actions that you want your new life and new consciousness to look like.
So this is after we
This is
have
after. This is
experienced-
integration,
This is
right?
integrating. Okay.
What?
Okay.
Yep.
I have to go here. I already outed myself as a sociologist, so I'm interested in these kinds of questions. You know, people listening, why are so many people that are going to listen and go, they're going to go, huh, that sounds nice, right? You know, why is that happening right now, right? Like, why are so many people drawn to this right now? Beyond the obvious, right? Destigmatization, and there's like a mimetic aspect where it seems cool, right? To your point, Denise, you know, 25 years ago, it wasn't cool, but now it does have this cool cachet. I would call both of those obvious. So like, what are the, like, maybe the less obvious or more intuitive reasons? And I know, Susanna, you mentioned we feel like we're on the precipice of an awakening right now. So what's going on? Why is so many people drawn to this work? And I'm going to call it work because it's medicine work, and it's not necessarily going to a disco.
Yeah, why would you willingly go into a situation in which you know that your insides are going to start to like need to purge something and go through a whole primal response? It's a great question because I've asked myself that many times in the middle of a ceremony. Why did I do this again? Oh yeah. Um, and the answer is because people are in severe pain right now. That's really the fundamental thing that's happening, is anything to help the pain go away. And even though there may be people who you look at from the outside and you think, oh, they're doing great. You know, they've got the great job, they've got the great career, they've got the great family and the house and the car and all the things, right? And I had that. And I think Denise had that. Like, we all had versions of that. And there was this white noise of severe pain underneath that is masking, you know, things like post-trauma, that's masking grief, unresolved grief, that's masking all of these emotions that are really, really, really heavy. And what ultimately starts to happen is you start, and this is the first, what I call the first phase of awakening. There's 3 phases: resistance, surrender, and play. And the resistance period is you feeling a significant amount of resistance in your body, and you can't necessarily put your finger on it. And so the first step is usually you get diagnosed with an autoimmune disease or some sort of chronic condition that the Western medical healthcare or medical system cannot help you with. And you go there first, you end up getting put on some sort of medication, and then usually that medication doesn't work, or it causes other side effects that cause you more pain and more discomfort, and then the discomfort just metastasizes over and over and over again. So people are usually coming to us a lot later after they have tried lots of other things. And they may have also, like Denise and I, gone on a spiritual awakening journey where they have also been called and actually had, you know, messages from their meditations and things say, hey, you should go to this medicine. But usually it's to get out of pain, and ultimately that it leads them out of there.
So using, I guess, yourselves as case studies here.
Such clinical language.
I'm curious if you could, you know, take us through, and whether it be, you know, your first journey, or maybe there's one in particular. I'm curious about the process of a ceremony, and two, about that release. I think about people I know a lot of times when we're recording these episodes, and I'm usually talking to people that I have in the back of my mind. You know, this I've said this is my way of like giving advice to people that like just don't want to take it from me anymore. But so now I'm just like shouting at the world, and whoever listens. But I think, that release part, you talk about like the purging that might happen or these primal responses or the body shaking, or there's a lot of things. And some people who come from that generation might be like, oh my gosh, why would I do that? You're going to purge and you're going to shake and you're going to cry. And oh my gosh, these are all bad things. Like these are all really bad things. I'm not going to do that. So that piece of it too, I'm very curious to get into the depths of what is happening there and why it's actually a good thing. And then coming into the next phase of integration and why that's so important. So all that said, I'm curious from your own point of view and your own experiences, if you guys can talk about examples of ceremony. That was loaded with a lot, I realize. So whoever wants to venture into answering that question
I can
first.
talk a little bit. Maybe I'll take I'll tackle it head on, the whole question around, we call it getting well. So when people think about ayahuasca ceremonies, right, they hear, oh, there's a lot of purging and, oh, it sounds messy, and it's getting well, right? There's a natural process in the body, energetically, spiritually, and physically, of releasing all the old gunk and stuff, that like things that no longer serve you. And that can take many forms. It could be yelling, could be shouting, could be shaking, could be puking, could be any number of bodily fluids. Like birth is messy, and it's
Right.
also the most beautiful, sacred, miraculous human event on the planet. Right? Anyone who's witnessed a birth, given birth, brought a child into this world knows it's beautiful and messy, and you take all of it is beautiful, right? And sacred. And so that's kind of how I view ceremony and medicine, getting well, is that, in order to release all that is no longer serving you, body, mind, and spirit, and make space for the new you that you are calling in with your clear intention, it's okay to get well. It's okay to get messy, to get physical, to be in your body, for it to not look pretty. Nobody's looking at you. It's like between you and God and the earth that you're throwing up on, is what I like to say, right? And so that's why when we do group ceremonies together, like, I've been in a few with Susanna, like it's like going through the trenches of a war, right? Like you come out the other end and you are so bonded. And it's like, yeah, I saw you go through that and I held your hand and we survived together, and it's a beautiful thing. So I would say to anybody who's thinking about it, but like afraid of, I have a good friend, a girlfriend, who didn't want to do ayahuasca. She didn't, because she knew she would look messy throwing up. I'm like, girlfriend, it's okay to look messy throwing up, like it's going to feel so good afterwards. And so she went on her Aya journey into the jungle. She was like, it was the best 8 days of my life. Literally, she's like, I threw up every day, multiple times a day, and yet it was still the most amazing process, because she came out the other end stronger, cleaner, aligned, all of the things. So I'd say just go for it, and it's okay. You can clean it up.
Yeah, it's like pooping when giving birth,
Yeah. Everybody poops. Everybody
just
pukes
come
at
in
some
and
point. It's all good.
wipe it away.
Yes, amazing. So as far as your own experiences or any tangible, I guess, and maybe it's not your own. Maybe there's something that
Oh no,
somebody that
I've
you.
got I got some
All right,
ones I
let's
can
go. Let's go.
happy to share with you. Yeah, let's see, like the messiest of the mess. Ayahuasca she tends to be the messier ones, right?
Sure.
Those tend to be, that's because she is a shadow worker, so she's been working really deeply in the depths of our root, like our connection to earth and things like that. So I went down to Peru in 2021 and lived there for a little bit, and then for a period of time went deep into the jungle and sat with ayahuasca for several ceremonies. And I remember one day, so when I first got there, it was interesting because the first thing they have you do is actually do a tobacco cleanse. And a tobacco cleanse is where you drink a shot of concentrated tobacco juice, and then you drink, you can't make this up, And then you drink a gallon of water as quickly as you possibly can. And as you're drinking it, you have a purge bucket right next to you, and you are vomiting as you drink. So drink, vomit, drink, vomit, drink, vomit. And that's your welcome to the center.
Welcome.
So you could go to Tahiti and get a really nice, drink with a little
Cocktail.
umbrella in it as you're welcome. Or
Right.
you can do like Susanna does, and you can go down to the Amazon and drink tobacco juice.
Yeah.
And
You hear
and
that,
vomit.
skeptics? All this could be yours for the price of
All this could be yours.
$5,000.
Yeah, it's remarkably reasonably priced for those retreats. So, and I chose that, and then over the course of my time there, it got to the point where there was an entire day or two, maybe a day and a half, where I physically couldn't move my body. Like my body got to a point where I was like, I have malaria for sure. One of these mosquitoes bit me. I am going to die here. I cannot physically move. I couldn't get out of bed. My body it was just like jello.
And that was
that
just having after just the welcome. At this point, you
that
haven't
wasn't just
taken.
after the welcome. That was after
Oh.
at least one. I think that was after 2 ceremonies with
Got it.
ayahuasca.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so she cleaned me out real good over the course of a couple. And then, there is purging. And for me, the purging was coming from the south end, not as much the north end. So I was just moving energy through my digestive system, which is really what she's designed to do, is to fully clear out also parasites, all the things that are
Yep.
built up, all the toxins that are built up in our digestion.
Okay.
So listeners, you get to know a little bit about my my digestion, and and it got to the point where I'll share this TMI moment where I finally thought to myself, I was like, there was a toilet, the only toilet, because the whole place was very rustic and it didn't have showers. You bathed in the river. But there were about 40 stairs from my bungalow, like my little cabin, down to where the toilet was. And I was like, there's no way. I went down there one time and almost passed out and laid on the ground for a little while before I could walk back up. So I was like, okay, I can't go back down there. So what am I going to do? So I'm finally, I was like, you know what? I'm going to ask for a bucket and we're going to see how this works. And I thought to myself of all the like military training where we were, going to the bathroom outside. And as it turns out, a bucket is an excellent toilet. So I can just tell you for a fact that it is. But on the other side of that and that journey of going, basically, like, I took myself down to the studs, down to absolute nothingness, and then began to rebuild myself actually in sort of the sacred valley of Peru, which is an incredibly energetically potent place. I was able to get to this place of clarity and nothingness. If you actually look at pictures of me during that time, I had, lost an incredible amount of weight. But I was able to get to a place of clarity because there was no real programming from the past. And so I was now reprogramming, recalibrating myself. And so that's what I would say is the benefit of this, is you get to clear out the physical remnants of your past, of your literal past shit. And I use that word very intentionally. All the past stuff that you've been storing in your digestive system, in your joints, in your ligaments, up in your brain. When you go through a period like that, which I don't necessarily recommend for everyone, that level of intensity, but when you do clear out, then you start to create space for something so much bigger. And metamorphosis would not be what it is today without that cleansing process. So
you have the obvious physical aspects of the cleansing that is happening during all of this, and after a couple of of ceremonies. I
Mm.
mean, what is going on mentally, emotionally at this point in time?
Yeah. And in that, this is, I'm excited to share this piece because what's happening physically is so intense, but the mental, spiritual, energetic pieces are like me frolicking through a meadow of sunflowers. Like
What a
it was
juxtaposition. I want AI to
wonderful.
make that. Like,
Yeah. It was like freedom, I was like, yes, this is the best thing ever. So it is totally a juxtaposition. And the first night, I actually experienced almost nothing for the entire ceremony. So I laid there in somewhat stillness for about 6 hours. And I was like, okay, medicine, like I'm ready now.
yeah.
And I get back to my bungalow, and right then I lay down in my tiny little cot, and she goes, "Hi." And the medicine's like right in my face and right in my consciousness. And I received a download of a prophecy that I carry that's in my DNA, of a remembering of basically this time, this era that we're living in, this great awakening. And then light language started to come through. So I started to speak in a completely different language, and it just downloaded into my body. And then another night I received an incredible amount of healing around my family's system, where she was just like, there's no need to pity any of these people because they're exactly doing what they're supposed to be doing. Like they're in their purpose. And it fully released me emotionally from having to feel burdened to care and hold everybody else's experience. So then, and then the last session I sat with her, I just envisioned all of the amazing meals that I was going to eat after I got out of there, like macaroni and cheese and spaghetti. And I just had a whole journey of like sensual pleasure into the meals that I was going to eat, because I had not really been eating for so long. So it was joyous. It was a completely joyous occasion. And my physical body was a wreck for a period of time.
Wow. 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 Wow.
Hashtag worth it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yes, this is very enticing for people, I'm sure. They are very intrigued.
But even on smaller scales, the whole download clarity, remembering, sort of reclaiming yourself, it's like you get sweeping away so that you can actually assume some agency in the world. Because before that, you're just a victim of thought patterns in your past, the structures. And so that yes, it's remembering you're actually an agent in the world and can create your reality, and then all of that coming online. And I haven't had that, but for me the profoundest thing was being telepathic with Michelle on a lot of mushrooms. She wasn't there, but something that I had been doing, being insecure, I just saw everything just in a download, her complete perspective. It was like I was inside Michelle, and I was like, oh my God, I get it. Wow. Yeah, I'm going to stop doing that immediately. And I just did. And I came home from the weekend. I was like, yeah, that's over. That's done. And she's like, what? And then said, it was a very healing thing for me.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, that's empathy right there.
Right. So that's like one experience of telepathy. I'm curious, how do you, Susanna, you're a new mom, right?
I am, yes.
How old is your kid?
He is 9.5 months. So
wow.
Yes, that's right
there. Yes.
Yay.
Teeny tiny little thing.
We've got a 2-year-old and another one on the way. And like, how do you talk to your kids about this? It's not quite like you see all the think pieces now. It's like, how do I tell my kids I'm polyamorous? It's not maybe on that level, but it is like, how do I tell my kids I'm a psychonaut? And how do I introduce them to this world? And you're both parents. So
yeah, Denise. And with your kids too, being 18, that's a vulnerable age, when it comes to so many things.
I have not hid my plant medicine exploration from my children. I literally have like psychedelic mushrooms on my coffee table right here. And I share, oh, I'm taking my mushroom vitamins. I mean, that's what my mom and my 100-year-old grandfather used to do. They used to do their mushroom vitamins in the morning together. Yeah. So I've been very open about my usage and explaining kind of like, Yeah, there's the law. And there's like, there used to be when I was your age, just war on drugs, but like these plants are not drugs. They're actually medicine from the earth meant to help heal humans and mind, body, spirit. So I've been really open about my embracing of plant medicines as a healing tool. As a healing tool that is non-pharmacological, that's not, prescription drugs, which, I'm like, look, even though those prescription drugs are legal, does not mean that they don't cause harm, right? Like, look at the whole opioid crisis. Like, those were very legal and they cause a lot of harm. So I've just been teaching my children about like the ins and outs of like at the highest level, drug
And
policy is not all that
yes,
it seems.
yes.
Right.
And seeing you firsthand being a responsible, ethical user of these medicines, like it's just putting
Mhm.
them in such a better mindset position to come across, because they're going to come across many things, obviously,
Mhm.
as they venture into their own adulthood, and they're going to be grounded in this perspective that you've had. And I just feel like that's such a gift for any child to be able to receive.
It's
Also, I feel like it's not even really like about broadcasting the use of it. It's more like how do I embody the effects of
Yeah.
plant medicines? Like
Mhm.
like it's more about walking the talk than talking about it.
Yep.
I don't care to talk about it. It's like, well, yeah, if you're curious, I'm happy to share. And
Right.
it's really about the integration and the embodiment of what comes through for me in the macro journeys and just the daily microdoses of like, oh, I'm more calm and patient as a mother as a result of my microdosing journeys. And I know that, and I think they see the effects of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
My experience of microdosing with Metamorphosis post telepathy camp was I was a more present father. I just was there, default mode network, wasn't going crazy. And I was just more comfortable being in the park, and maybe getting down on his level a little bit more, less like what's going on my phone or, like, the things that can pull you away and then create, tension and grasping to other things. And so that's been my experience. And we're not to the point where we have to talk to Murphy about this yet, nor are you, Susanna. But like Murphy's favorite book is "I Love You So Mush." Is a book about
Oh,
mushrooms. So that's
Yeah. None of
adorable.
our doing. He just loves it. So yeah.
That's adorable. I need that book. And I microdosed during pregnancy,
You did.
and during postpartum. And there was recently a study around the postpartum microdosing that shows, im- massive improvement of like hormonal balance from it. And I definitely got, the moment I said I microdosed during pregnancy, there were like, 25 people in my community that were like, and
Of
I was like,
course.
how many people are on antidepressants while they're pregnant? Okay.
Totally.
So it's been, yeah, definitely a journey of stepping into more deeper and deeper trust of just knowing like these are the true medicine. And I've always believed that earth holds medicine for us, whereas a lot of these other substances um, are going to just kind of keep us in the symptom management. So I'm delighted to be with alongside Denise in the voice of like root cause healing and knowing that that's what these medicines are here to do.
Yes. Amen.
how
Amen.
does somebody get involved, right? Like, are
Well, I
you are
want to
you?
talk about microdosing. We haven't talked about microdosing. Can we talk about microdosing now?
Yeah, I was gonna like.
We've been talking, we've heard microdosing now twice. So let's talk about microdosing. So explain for people that don't understand what microdosing is, if you could share a little bit about what that looks like, and from a metamorphosis perspective too, I guess specifically what it is that you guys offer from a microdosing point of view.
Well, I'll start with this one, and then Denise, you can add on to it. But yeah, the microdosing has very quickly become my favorite way of engaging with plant medicines because, especially after having experienced several macrodoses, I realized that the reason why we're engaging with these medicines is really to operate in daily life better, right? Like you said, I want to be a better father. I want to be more present. I want to be more loving. I want to be more connected. All of that is in relationship with other people. And that is what microdosing facilitates, because it allows you to access a little bit of that heightened, that higher vibration of the medicine, while also remaining very present in daily life. And what we believe and what we've seen over, hundreds of people microdosing with our sacrament and also others, and guiding them, is that over the course of about 3 months, so that's why we make our protocol 12 weeks. It's a 12-week protocol, where you're microdosing 3 days on, 4 days off. People report having their entire nervous system settle down, which at first actually feels like they're very, very tired. So they experience like a sensation of exhaustion. And then slowly but surely their nervous system just gets used to that. And they realize like, oh, this is what safety feels like. And then from there, a lot of chronic conditions start to disappear. Chronic indigestion especially starts to disappear. They sleep better at night. And what we've started to really develop and kind of hone in on is weaning off of other pharmaceuticals, because pharmaceuticals are one of the pain points that a lot of people have. Like I mentioned at the beginning, a lot of people will go toward pharmaceuticals to be the thing to heal them from a chronic condition or from chronic pain. And then they'll realize very quickly that that pharmaceutical is not helping. It's actually making things worse. And especially with antidepressants. So we have a 12-week protocol that goes alongside a course called Mindful Microdosing that basically helps people to wean off of other substances, which also could be other things that you're codependent with, like nicotine, alcohol, workaholism, even relational challenges. But we've found that that's what microdosing does, is it raises our vibration just enough and gives us a chance to have a rooted, intentional ritual in our life that grounds us back into really who we know we are. So it's a little dose of remembering every single day. And yeah, so I'd say that's how I see it.
I like to think of it as like a vitamin for my consciousness. It's like, and you take it, like I take it 3 times a week. 3 days on is our protocol at Metamorphosis, 4 days off. I tend to take it at the end of the week. So like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It is subperceptual. So like, meaning like you're not meant to perceive that you've taken it. It's like, you might feel more spaciousness, just that like lag in terms of response to something happening on the outside, like just more spaciousness of breath and calm, less anxiety. But I kind of see it as, like a raising your vibration so that you can be more embodied while aware and connected to your own spirit self, right? Like, and all that is around you. It's just a beautiful way to it's like a consciousness vitamin.
Yeah, I definitely perceived that I was happier at a minimum, right? Like much happier.
Yeah, I didn't feel, I kind of forgot that I took it, honestly, when I did, and you just kind of go on with your day. But you feel lighter.
I feel like the mushroom, I believe mushrooms are conscious, plants are conscious.
Right.
It's like having a bit of like a, mushroom spirit guide with you. I feel more connected in my own heart space and to humanity on the days that I microdose. I feel like I have more equanimity, compassion for all of the crazy things that are happening in the world. I tend not to read the news on the days that I microdose because I want to be really aligned in my intention for where I put my energy and focus, because I also feel like on the days that I microdose, not only am I receiving more input into my channel as a transceiver, but I'm also transmitting more strongly whatever it is I'm holding in my field. So like I feel like I can transmit more love on the days that I microdose.
Sure.
And that kind of has a ripple effect of its own. So
Totally. I feel that.
Good.
So we could say, this is a consciousness vitamin and that it's raising our vibration. But I'm curious, on a biological level, if I'm a scientist, what is happening that is allowing this protocol to do things like help people with their dependency on pharmaceuticals or alcohol or whatever it might be? Their relational issues are getting solved more easily. What is happening biologically that's enabling that to happen?
Yeah. Yeah. This is, first of all, people are still learning because there is a
Hmm.
magic to mushrooms that science still cannot quite catch
They're
up
still
with,
catching
right?
up. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Still
They
figuring it
haven't
out.
measured it yet. Right.
No, we haven't measured all the depth of understanding. They're like, we know this thing happens and this thing happens, but then what is the real magic? There is something way
Hmm.
beyond what we can even measure. But what we do know happens is, number one, anytime you're engaging with a plant medicine that encourages an altered state of consciousness, it's quieting the default mode network of the brain, which is that pattern-based part of the brain that allows you to go through life also in some ways with muscle memory, right? So there's
Hmm.
a level of like, you get in the car, you put your seatbelt on, you put your hands on the steering wheel, you put your foot on the gas. Your body knows how to do the thing. And we do a lot of behaviors like that. So it's quieting that. And then it is actually increasing the flow of serotonin and redirecting the serotonin because the default mode network is quieted. The serotonin is encouraged to take neurotransmitters to different parts of the brain that it doesn't normally go to, which this is what increases curiosity and what allows you to feel like a child when you are with this medicine, because you're now activating. There's literally parts of the brain that are highlighting and that are opening up and being connected that weren't connected before. And those neurotransmitters are able to then be like, oh, boop, here's an idea that I would have never thought about this concept. And that's where you get those like almost like an internal coach moment where you're facing a problem and then suddenly there is an idea that pops in your head about that problem that you've been stuck on for 5 years that's like, well, what if I just did this? Right. And it creates this creative outlet of awakening. And then on a physical level, there's still research being done into this, and I will probably be doing some of this research myself. But it is helping to increase the flow of cerebrospinal fluid up into the brain because it's starting to essentially eat away at some mushrooms are detoxifiers, right? We know that what they do in nature is to turn death into life. And so they literally, sometimes I think of them like little garden gnomes, and they're going in there just like, like little munching away at all the old stuff. but the psilocin comes into the body and it starts to basically transmute, alchemize these old things that were stuck in and around all parts of the body, but especially the spine. And that's going to then activate the nervous system on a new level. And it's going to increase the flow of cerebrospinal fluid up to the brain, which will then allow things like the pineal gland, which is an antenna, to operate better, to decalcify. It's also going to allow the pituitary gland to rebalance. So then it's pushing out the proper hormones, which also is at the same time reducing the activity in your amygdala. So you're not producing as much cortisol and other of those fight or flight, adrenaline, things like that. So it's easing your adrenals. It is increasing your sense of calm and connection with yourself, and it's allowing you to come into greater stillness. So all of those things are happening in your body system. And obviously in a macro session, that's going to be on an amplified level, but then you're going to be able to experience that same template when you microdose on a day-to-day basis. And if you pair that with meditation and other practices, I mean, you're literally on your way to a spiritual awakening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it reminds me because children, are so just like sponges, obviously, and they learn so much faster than adults can because they don't have those neural pathways that have been reconditioned over time, over time, over time. So the way that you said that, you're almost becoming childlike. It's like microdosing allows you to relearn like a child and be that sponge that you haven't been able to be as this conditioned adult.
Return to beginner's mind,
Right.
basically. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, do you distribute nationally? Like, how have you gotten scale? I know you've had to incorporate as a church in order to distribute. So we're here in Minnesota. How do we become members of the congregation? How does anybody listening, become a congregant? How do they find you? How do
Yeah.
they
How
get
would
you?
one get involved? I know that you work with like practitioners and as well, and helping people become facilitators and space holders. But if I'm somebody just listening and I'm like, I'd like to microdose, please. Like, how does somebody get involved?
You can go to Metamorphosis Ventures, which is our website, and you can see our mindful microdosing course at the top. It's a do-it-yourself course, but we also have live check-ins a couple times a month where you can get support, right, with others in the course and with Susanna. So if you go to metamorphosis.ventures/mindful-microdosing,
We'll link it. We'll link it.
you can sign up for that, and you can also become a member of the church through donation. And you can donate for a sacrament kit, which will be sent to you through the mail after we receive your donation. And then you can also join us in the community as a practitioner, as a coach. We welcome therapists. We welcome anyone who's kind of curious about starting their awakening journey in community is welcome to join us. You need not microdose, but we certainly support that as well. If you go onto the website, you'll find all the ways you can join us and get involved. And we do have a beautiful live event coming up in October that we want
Tell us
to
about
invite
that.
everyone to. Susanna, you want to share a little bit about Metafest?
Oh, man. Yes, it is going to be epic. This is the second time we're doing it. The very first time was just miraculous. And it was the birth, actually, of the community cultivated medicine we worked with. So that was the birth of Trinity. Now we are birthing a whole community of a mycelial network of incredible humans and organizations that are coming together. It is going to be in Northern California in a fantastic little place called Tuolumne. That's a wonderful mouthful. And
Right.
it is in north of Yosemite National Park. So it's gorgeous. We'll be out there. You can go to metafest.live. And that's where you'll be able to find our community or find details about the event. We have a keynote facilitator that Denise actually helped us, connect with, and he is the holder of a lineage called Ho'oponopono that is all about forgiveness and reconciliation and community connectedness. And so we're just absolutely delighted to have all of the speakers and facilitators come. And the other thing I would offer that we'll link in the show notes is our Discord channel. So join us there. That's where we share information on a daily basis. And if you're just curious about psychedelics, that's a great spot to go. Or to get, I often post like inspirational quotes. So if you want some inspirational quotes in your life or meditations or other guided activities, join us. And we're delighted to have you in our community.
Oh, we could all use a little inspiration every day. So
We would come to Metafest, but
we're so bummed.
Michelle's going to be giving birth like
You're
I
about
was
to have a
gonna
baby.
say,
so pregnant.
You've got a hall pass. You
You're
got a
so
baby hall
pregnant.
pass.
yeah, but like maybe next year if it's going to
We
happen
will
again.
be there
Yeah.
next year for sure. And I'm
Next
just
year.
so excited about everything that you guys are doing. I feel like, Telepathy Camp birthed a lot of amazing relationships, Denise, you being one of them, and it's continued to connect us to so many people. I am a part of the Metamorphosis Discord, and there have been some chats in there. So despite not being able to go to Metafest this year, this connection will be ongoing, and I'm looking forward to
Absolutely.
seeing
And
how
we'd,
that
we'd love to
unfolds.
invite you all and your listeners to the Emergence program, which is starting
Oh.
next year, which we just completed.
Tell
I
us,
completed
tell us
earlier
about
this year.
that, please.
Denise is a graduate, so she can tell
I
you.
just graduated.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
What
And
is
it's
this
basically
emergence
like
program?
it's a soul-led incubator for leaders and
Okay.
and people that want to step into being a space holder or a medicine
Yeah.
server. That's not necessary. You don't need to serve medicine, but that's the optional part. beyond the foundational training to basically take yourself through an awakening journey so that you can also guide and lead others, whether you're a business leader, a founder, an entrepreneur. I've used my emergence training in my work as a fractional CMO. So I've now been able to kind of merge my gifts as a marketer where I'm supporting like CEOs and founders and entrepreneurs in both medicine journeys for themselves and their teams, as well as in helping them transform their companies with this method of transformation. So it's been really powerful for me in my work.
Amazing. Well, congratulations. You said you just graduated. Was that the word you used? Graduated?
Did you walk across the stage?
Yeah,
Exactly.
we actually do. I really wanted them to. They did cross a threshold. They did have a really beautiful threshold moment where they got to, because it's an initiation program.
Initiation.
Yes. So it's
that's
it's a very
awesome.
deep process of 12
Absolutely.
to 15 months of deep inner study and practice. And in many ways, all of us are co-creating it together, because in this new earth, this more divine feminine way of operating, it's not like I know all of the pathways to all the things, or the teachers or the guides know all the things. It's like we are here to hold the space for you to go to the depths of your being and then to come out on the other side. And that's and at Metamorphosis, you can do that in various ways. It can be just like the microdosing depth, it can be the macro depth, it can be a full-on 12-month dark night of the soul. What do you want?
Yeah.
We got you.
And it's such a gift, honestly, to be able to go through all of that hardship, to go through at any level you just outlined. Like, what a gift to give yourself to be able to do that. I remember doing a walking meditation at a retreat when I was like, I wasn't sure about starting inner work, but then it's like, no, this is a gift I'm giving. Then the whole emotions changed, and yeah, I think that what you're offering is such a gift to people, and this has been a gift to talk to you guys today. So thank you.
We're so in support
much.
of everything that you guys are doing. I am so excited to see what's next and where 10 years brings you. You're the people that we all need, and it's very refreshing, and the vision is inspiring. And so thank you for taking the time to talk to us today. It's been lovely.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you,
It's such a
thank you,
pleasure.
thank you. Blessings on baby as
Thank
they
you.
arrive.
Thank you.